In the annals of 20th century history, few regimes have perpetrated such systematic brutality against their own people as the Khmer Rouge under Pol Pot's leadership in Cambodia. Between 1975 and 1979, approximately 2 million people, nearly a quarter of Cambodia's population, perished through execution, starvation, disease, and overwork. The impact of this genocide continues to reverberate through Cambodian society today, serving as a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for both unimaginable cruelty and remarkable resilience. The story begins with a young man named Saloth Sa, born in 1925 to a relatively prosperous farming family in Kompong Tom province. The future Pol Pot enjoyed privileges uncommon for most Cambodians. His family had connections to the royal court, and young Saloth Sa received an education at some of Cambodia's elite institutions. In 1949, he received a scholarship to study radio electronics in Paris, where he would spend the next 4 years, a period that would profoundly shape his ideological development. The post-World War II period in Paris was a hotbed of leftist intellectual activity. Saloth Sa joined the French Communist Party and became immersed in revolutionary ideology. Along with other Cambodian students, including Ieng Sari and Khieu Samphan, who would later become key figures in the Khmer Rouge, he began formulating ideas about how to transform Cambodia. Rather than excelling in his studies, he devoted himself to political activities and theoretical discussions about Marxism, Stalinism, and Maoism. Upon returning to Cambodia in 1953, Saloth Sa began teaching at a private school while secretly joining the underground communist movement. The movement was gaining strength as Cambodia achieved independence from France under Prince Norodom Sihanouk. By the early 1960s, Saloth Sa had risen through the ranks of the Communist Party of Kampuchea, eventually becoming its leader in 1963. Throughout the 1960s, the movement that would become known as the Khmer Rouge operated primarily in remote rural areas. Pol Pot, as Saloth Sa now called himself, and his followers developed their particular brand of revolutionary ideology, combining elements of Marxism-Leninism with extreme nationalism and an idealization of peasant life. The escalation of the Vietnam War proved crucial to the Khmer Rouge's rise. As American bombing campaigns spilled into Cambodia, attempting to destroy North Vietnamese supply lines, the devastation of rural areas drove many peasants to support the Khmer Rouge. Prince Sihanouk's overthrow in 1970 by the US-backed Lon Nol government further destabilized the country and increased support for the insurgency. The Khmer Rouge developed a radical vision for transforming Cambodia into an agrarian utopia. They planned to abolish money, private property, religion, and traditional culture. Cities would be evacuated, and the entire population would work in agricultural communes. The concept of Year Zero embodied their determination to completely rebuild Cambodian society from scratch. On April 17, 1975, Khmer Rouge forces entered Phnom Penh. Initially welcomed by many as liberators who would end the civil war, they immediately began implementing their radical program. Within hours, they ordered the complete evacuation of the capital city, forcing approximately 2 million people to leave their homes and march into the countryside. The evacuation was conducted with extraordinary brutality. The sick were forced from hospitals, families were separated, and those who refused to leave or could not walk were executed. The Khmer Rouge claimed the evacuation was necessary to prevent American bombing, but their real motivation was ideological: to destroy urban society and transform the population into a rural workforce. The new state, renamed Democratic Kampuchea, was structured around a system of agricultural communes. The population was divided into categories. Base people, poor peasants, were considered ideologically pure, while new people, urban dwellers, educated individuals and their descendants were viewed with suspicion and subjected to harsher treatment. The Khmer Rouge established a nationwide system of prison camps, forced labor sites, and execution centers. The most notorious was S21, a former high school in Phnom Penh converted into a torture center where approximately 14,000 people were interrogated and executed. Only 7 prisoners are known to have survived. In their attempt to create a purely agrarian society, the Khmer Rouge particularly targeted educated individuals. Teachers, doctors, lawyers, and even people who wore glasses were singled out for execution. Speaking a foreign language or showing any sign of Western influence could be a death sentence. Life under the Khmer Rouge was characterized by extreme hardship. People worked from dawn to dusk in the fields with minimal food. Family relationships were subordinated to loyalty to Angkar, the organization. Children were encouraged to spy on their parents, and many were separated from their families to be indoctrinated or used as child soldiers. The Khmer Rouge's ideology combined extreme nationalism with a distorted version of communism. They promoted the idea of racial purity and superiority of the Khmer people, while simultaneously attempting to eliminate traditional Khmer culture and Buddhism. Their propaganda emphasized absolute loyalty to Angkar and the need to eliminate internal enemies. Young people, particularly teenagers, were seen as the most malleable and therefore the most valuable to the revolution. The Khmer Rouge deliberately recruited very young cadres, often from poor rural backgrounds, to carry out their brutal policies. These youth were easier to indoctrinate and often showed less hesitation in carrying out acts of violence. The regime systematically destroyed Cambodia's cultural heritage. Temples were converted into prison camps or storage facilities, traditional music and dance were banned, and countless artifacts were destroyed. The goal was to eliminate any sense of individual identity or cultural connection that might compete with loyalty to the regime. Despite reports of atrocities filtering out of Cambodia, the international community's response was largely muted. Cold War politics complicated the situation, with China supporting the Khmer Rouge, while Vietnam opposed it. Western nations, traumatized by their experience in Vietnam, were reluctant to become involved in another Southeast Asian conflict. China was the Khmer Rouge's primary international supporter, providing military aid and advisors. The Chinese model of cultural revolution and agricultural collectivization heavily influenced Khmer Rouge policies, although the Cambodian version was far more extreme. It was ultimately Vietnam that ended the Khmer Rouge regime, invading Cambodia in December 1978 in response to border clashes and the Khmer Rouge's treatment of ethnic Vietnamese. By January 1979, Vietnamese forces had captured Phnom Penh and installed a new government. When the Vietnamese army and Cambodian rebels overthrew the Khmer Rouge, they discovered a nation in ruins. The population had been decimated, the economy destroyed, and the social fabric torn apart. Nearly every family had lost members to execution, starvation, or disease. Despite losing power, the Khmer Rouge continued to maintain control over parts of Cambodia throughout the 1980s and into the 1990s, supported by China and Thailand, and ironically, by the United States and other Western powers who opposed Vietnam's occupation of Cambodia. Pol Pot died in 1998 without facing justice for his crimes. In 2006, the Extraordinary Chambers in the Courts of Cambodia was established to try senior Khmer Rouge leaders. Several key figures, including Kaing Guek Eve, known as Duch, who ran the S21 prison, and Nuon Chea, the regime's chief ideologist, were eventually convicted of crimes against humanity. The Khmer Rouge period profoundly affected Cambodian society. An entire generation of educated professionals was largely wiped out, creating a demographic gap that has hampered Cambodia's development. The trauma of the period continues to affect survivors and their descendants. Despite the Khmer Rouge's attempts to destroy Cambodian culture, many traditions have survived or been revived. However, the loss of so many cultural practitioners and the destruction of cultural artifacts created gaps in the transmission of traditional knowledge and arts. Modern Cambodia has made significant progress in economic development and stability, but challenges remain. Corruption, poverty, and political tensions continue to affect the country. The shadow of the Khmer Rouge period influences contemporary politics and society in complex ways. The Cambodian Genocide offers important lessons about how extremist ideologies can take root and lead to mass violence. The combination of utopian ideology, totalitarian control, and dehumanization of perceived enemies created conditions for systematic killing on an enormous scale. The Khmer Rouge period represents one of the most extreme attempts at social engineering in human history, resulting in one of the worst genocides of the 20th century. The legacy of this dark period continues to influence Cambodia and offers important lessons about the dangers of extremist ideology and the importance of protecting human rights and democratic values. As Cambodia continues to grapple with this difficult history, the international community must remain vigilant against the conditions that can give rise to such systematic violence and support efforts to prevent future genocides. Let us know if you enjoyed this video. Also, let us know in the comments what historical figures or events you'd like us to profile next. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos like these.